Okay, I took my article from CNR magazine, loaded it into ChatGPT, and asked it to create a podcast script for contractors.
Really?
So let's see. This is guaranteed to be better than anything I've ever produced. So,
what are you, stupid?
Here we go. Podcast script, let the structure speak. Intro music fades in. Boop. Host. Hey there, contractors and restorers. Welcome back to another episode of the DYOJO Podcast. DYOJO Podcast! Where we break down the real-world dynamics of project management, insurance claims, and everything in between. I'm your host, insert name. Oh, John Isaacson.
This is not okay.
And today, we're tackling the topic that often gets lost in the noise during insurance claim disputes, letting the structure speak for itself. So let's dive right in to Let the Structure Speak. Music fades out.
Hi, everybody out there, JoJo Nation.
DYOJO is the Do Your Own Job Dojo.
Sweep the leg.
Curated by John Isaacson, contractor,
Can I inspect your home?
author,
There's nothing like it out there.
and mediocre podcast host.
Nicely done on keeping it together.
The DYOJO Podcast.
Should be listening to you.
Helping contractors shorten their dang learning curve. So we're talking about letting the structure speak. Let the structure speak. This would be in relationship to collecting the data, composing an estimate, discussing the scope of work with the customer, negotiating with the insurance company and the parties that be. So we hear all the time that contractors and insurance carriers need to remember who their client is. When's the last time you heard that? Remember who your client is. The implication being that the policyholders' interests should take center stage. Let the customer, we work for you. The insurance company works for you. And this is true in terms of the contract. But an important piece of the restoration triangle,
Any classic loss is going to at least involve three people.
Is he about to say it?
Three people. Three people.
The restoration
Three people.
triangle.
Three people.
Smooth voice you're hearing explain the intricacies of insurance policies and how they relate to insurance claims is our friend David Princeton from Advocate Claim Service. He was most recently on episode 47 and 48 of the DYOJO Podcast with author Bill Wilson, When Words Collide, which is another book strongly recommended for anyone dealing with insurance policies.
You're going to have the policyholder, the one who suffered the loss. You're going to have a contractor, the person that's going to fix it. And you're going to have an insurance company and their adjuster.
The restoration
Three people.
triangle.
So at a minimum, those are the three people that have to be involved in it.
We call it the restoration triangle.
The restoration triangle.
The restoration
Three people.
triangle.
Beautiful term. I like that.
Great story, compelling and rich.
So when it comes to damage assessment, scope creation, claims negotiation, and the contract details, there's a more critical principle we should focus on, and I would argue that is letting the structure speak. Let the structure speak. Because, let's face it, the structure doesn't lie. Has the structure ever lied to you? Maybe it's hidden things, concealed things, or not released all of the details, but we're all familiar with bias, right? We're naturally inclined to see our perspective as the right one, and sometimes we question others, right? Contractors question the carrier. They're always trying to nickel and dime the contractor. The carrier is always questioning the contractor. Why is it so stinking expensive? The customer's kind of caught in the middle. What the heck is going on between you two? But the issue I think we fall into, when I started in the industry, it was, hey customer, we're going to take care of everything. All you're going to have to pay for is your deductible, and we'll take care of everything. And to a degree that used to be true, when we were still meeting on site with adjusters, talking with somebody that knew, the adjuster was supposed to come and say, this is what the policy does and does not cover. The restoration.
3 people.
Triangle. Contractor would say, hey, this is what we think we need to do to make this happen. The restoration.
3 people.
Triangle. Customers kind of listening to both go back and forth. Maybe there's some negotiation, but for the most part, it was a fairly linear process. The restoration.
3 people.
Triangle. I think insurance has definitely done their part to maybe blur, or what's the popular phrasing? Delay, deny, defend. And then contractors, we cannot let ourselves off the hook. Even though this is a show for contractors, if you can't see that we've made some of our own issues, you are blind, my friend.
This is not okay.
So the mindset leads to this us versus them mentality, in particular contractor versus carrier. And then the policyholder was, I don't know what to do. Well, you have a contract with your insurance carrier. Make sure they're doing what they said they would do when you bought the dang policy.
Honest conversations.
Whoa. So Pete Consigli.
Hi, everybody out there, JoJo Nation. This is the global watchdog, Pete Consigli.
Sums it up really well when he calls these 3 parties the restoration triangle. The restoration.
3 people.
Triangle. So the one who's paying, the carrier in most cases, the one who's damaged, the policyholder, and the one who's fixing, the contractor. Each has their own perspective and responsibility in the claims process. The policyholder knows what happened to their property. The contractor should be the expert in the actual damages, and the carrier should know the ins and outs of the policy. It's not always the case because you're not always dealing with somebody versed in policy. A lot of times it's a claims representative or a TPA. But the same could be said for contractors. A lot of times we're not dealing with people. There's a lot of business people in the restoration space and the construction space, not necessarily technicians or people that learned it from the ground up and are now ready to, build a business based on their knowledge and hire other people that have knowledge. So it's not just lopsided, but I think an intent to this I want to speak to is also the customer, informing the customer, hey, this is the standard that we're using. This is the process we're using. We would expect that you interject and engage your insurance company where you think they're not acting in line with what they said they were selling you with the insurance product.
This is not a game, cupcake!
If you're watching the video, you'll notice I'm enjoying a nice cigar. This is the Joya Cabineta. It's got a Nicaraguan tip and a Connecticut wrapper. It's quite nice. And while I'm enjoying that, you're going to enjoy a few words from our sponsors. We want to thank our sponsor.
I will not bow to any sponsor.
Epic Estimates. Any estimate, anywhere, anytime. Let the award-winning Epic Estimates help your team write the next Xactimate or Symbility estimate, freeing your team up to do what they're good at while helping your business maximize productivity and profitability. The Restoration Industry Association. Connect and collaborate with your industry peers through the largest nonprofit professional trade association dedicated to the unique plight of restoration contractors. Join us April 8th through 10th, 2024 in Dallas, Texas for the RIA Convention and Industry Expo. Actionable Insights has built the Actionable Xactimate profile, which provides live estimating guidance while you work in Xactimate to help your estimating team avoid costly mistakes. Create accurate, more complete estimates with the Actionable profile. It's a no-brainer for anyone looking to upgrade their Xactimate estimating workflow. No more estimating mistakes, no more missed line items. How to Suck Less at Estimating. Habits for Better Project Outcomes. Book number 4 by John Isaacson. This is available in paperback as well as an interactive course available through our friends at Restoration Technical Institute. Gain valuable insights on setting your estimating team up for success, processes and procedures for good sketches, detailed photo documentation for claims, how to level up as an estimator, and field resources such as using Xactimate for materials list and budgeting. By taking the 6-module course, again through our friends at Restoration Technical Institute, you can gain 6 hours of self-paced instruction that are eligible for continuing education credits with the IICRC. Thank you to our sponsors. Please let them know that you heard about them on the DYOJO Podcast.
You have entered the DYOJO Podcast.
Somewhat promotional mode coming out of that advertiser moment. Thank you to our advertisers. Please let them know you heard about them on the DYOJO Podcast. I'd like to talk about a principle that's shared in most of my books. This is the third one, the yellow one, So You Want to Be a Project Manager, available on Amazon in paperback, hardback, and I believe in audio as well. Again on Amazon, available on Amazon, or in bulk through the DYOJO.
So you want to be a project manager? A project manager?
But one of the principles I think is very important for owners, managers, mitigation managers, construction managers, when you're dealing with insurance in particular, is communicating the standard. The DYOJO standard, the standard. But the job of insurance, when the claim is accepted, is to restore the property to resemble pre-loss conditions with materials of like, kind, and quality.
Discussions for the first time about the right thing.
There is a ton of gray area in that, but if we can present as the contractor to the customer, hey, we are operating off a standard, and the standard is that we're expecting, since your insurance company accepted this claim, that they are going to fulfill their obligation to restore the property to resemble pre-loss conditions with materials of like, kind, and quality. I think as you interpret our scope, as you interpret what your insurance company is saying, we're going to do our best to allow the structure to speak as we do our assessments. You're going to see they're very detailed. And in a lot of cases, we're the only ones actually coming to the property. A lot of insurance companies aren't sending adjusters, even independent adjusters, or anybody to the property. So we're the contractor. We're going to do the data capture. We're going to do the moisture metering. We're going to open walls. We're going to remove things that we think can't be properly dried in place. And then we're going to put an assessment together to dry the structure, dry what we can, restore what we can. And then we're going to put an estimate together to put it all back together on the premise of, again, restoring the property to resemble pre-loss conditions with materials of like, kind, and quality. So that should be the filter, the standard that we all operate from. You, customer, may not understand all of the intricacies of what's going on. We don't understand it. Apparently, neither does your insurance company. We do a lot of this, but if you will work with us from that standard, based on what the structure is telling us, because we're going to let it speak. Let the structure speak. Then we have a better chance of presenting a realistic, united front. Again, not for your interest, not for our interest as a contractor, and definitely not for the interest of the insurance company, but the structure. What is the structure telling us? What does the structure need? What is it going to take to put it all back together? So that is the standard. So frame it, frame yourself, teach your team, operate from the standard, and then let's add what we're talking about today, letting the structure speak. Let the structure speak. If each party in that triangle has their own perspective and responsibility in the claims process, I'd like to say that again. They have their own perspectives, but they also have their own responsibilities. The policy holder knows what happened to their property. Whether that's I came home, it was flooded, I noticed this spot on the ceiling, the dishwasher exploded, whatever that is, they know they can relay, hey, this is what happened. I called my insurance company, or I called the plumber, I called a contractor. The contractor is supposed to be the expert on the damages. So if that's in the mitigation scenario, coming through with the moisture meters and determining the source and extent of the loss. And then the carrier knows, or should know, the ins and outs of the policy. That's the part that they're supposed to bring to the table. So the kicker is, none of these voices should be allowed to drown out the one that matters most, the most unbiased in this whole process, and that is the structure. The building itself does not have an agenda. It can hide things like, shall we say, the 4-letter word, mold, or water damage. But when you assess it properly, when these parties are committed to assessing it properly, the structure will tell you what's going on. Let the structure speak. Starting with the standard, restore the structure to resemble pre-loss conditions with materials of like kind and quality, based on what we've gathered from the structure, what it is telling us. So let's let the structure speak in mitigation and repairs. So in mitigation, it's about understanding the source and the extent of the damages. Again, the most common is water. So that's, all right, the water heater was the source. Where did it go? The house may be, like most homes, uneven, so water traveled to the lowest point. That may be just within that one room, or it may have gone all the way to the other end of the house. And so if we're doing things in realistic service of trying to determine, did it go into that area? Oftentimes we'll tell people drywall, for the most part, is one of the easier components to replace and restore to resemble pre-loss conditions. So that means we got to open up a wall just to be sure. We're going to do that. Now, if it's things like tile floor or cabinets, countertops, higher ticket items, then we probably all want to get on the same page and say, hey, our meters are telling us that there's an issue that most likely is going on over here. We've assessed all of the layers to this. What happens when you get tile on top of a prior floor, on top of another floor, and maybe there's asbestos in there, right? So that changes the parameters. But in mitigation, it's about understanding the source, determining the extent of damages, and then creating an action plan.
That's going to help you.
And I would say, too, in our name, it says property restoration, right? We're property restoration companies. If all we're going to do is go in and rip everything out, we really should change our name to demolition companies.
Silent scan.
For those of you who might have a little trouble keeping up, Rant Alert. What I'm saying is property restoration.
Restoration.
When's the last time you restored something, mitigated, made the problem less worse?
Restoration.
Remediated, remedy. If all we're going to do is demolish, maybe we're not restorers.
Restoration.
So in repairs, it's about documenting the site conditions and determining the scope of restoration.
Can I inspect your home?
The work's been completed to dry the structure, to clean the structure, to get the odor out of the structure.
Restoration.
So let's break that down even further. How do we let the structure speak during damage assessment? Let the structure speak. First, it's called damage assessment. This is where everyone has an opinion, but the structure will give you the facts. In a water damage scenario, for instance, you've got your visual inspections and moisture assessment tools to help you confirm the conditions. Thermal imaging that can help us determine variances in the temperature of surfaces that give us better indications of where we might be searching and go more detailed with our moisture meters. And so we have all kinds of tools that help us in this damage assessment. And if we're using them properly, they're helping us draw that information from the structure. We call this process at the DYOJO thorough data capture, TDC. And it's the first element in our formula for creating defensible estimates. More about this process of creating defensible estimates. Here's another
book hug moment.
This is the 4th book from the DYOJO, from the Intentional Restorer, John Isaacson, How to Suck Less at Estimating. My first book, Be Intentional Estimating, is still one of the most popular that my friends in the industry read. This one goes into a lot more detail on how to gather the data, enter it into, in particular, an estimating software called Xactimate. I would like to make a sidebar. I've been doing presentations this year on the 3 P's of project management.
So you want to be a project manager? A project manager?
I just recently did that for the Experience. I did it earlier this year for Restoration Industry Association and the National Association of Home Builders. And one thing that I encouraged attendees is there's a lot of frustration with Xactimate, or another program is CoreLogic Symbility. But even if you're using TNM, you're entering data. And for the insurance companies, Xactimate and CoreLogic Symbility, if you think of it more as a communication tool as opposed to an estimating tool, I think you might remove some of the frustration, because it's not an estimating software, it's a data entry software. You gather the data, you plug it into their formula. It's not all that terrible when you think previously contractors were using spreadsheets or the carbon copy paper, but a lot of stuff is based on linear foot or square footage. There used to be RS means, it still exists, but you could get the book at Home Depot and you check out what the pricing was in the area and use that as kind of a guideline. But if an insurance carrier is telling you, I can't interpret this, they're not saying necessarily always we reject your estimate. It does not compute if it's not in our language, and the language oftentimes is these estimating platforms.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
The formula we present: thorough data capture plus accurate data input equals a defensible estimate. So that thorough data capture a lot of times is what the technicians are gathering, and then the estimators or office staff are entering that into the software to create an estimate or an invoice. And so if you want that to be defensible, the things that go along with that, which is what we do talk about in Be Intentional Estimating, the first book, the 10 commandments of an Xactimate estimate, things like labeled photos, scope notes or F9 notes that help explain things that are out of the ordinary. But again, think of it from the standpoint of a communications platform. I'm trying to speak your language by using your program, so please understand, it's not going to fit every scenario, but we've done the best we can to communicate it that way as a starting point. I'm not advocating that, that's the end of the discussion, but it's typically a decent starting point. Remember, thorough data capture, TDC, plus accurate data input, ADI, equals a defensible estimate, DE.
The art and science of estimating.
How to suck less at estimating.
Support for that responsibility and expertise coming from the contractor, surprisingly, is even supported by big players like State Farm. They say, and I quote, the most appropriate way to estimate the replacement cost of your home is to hire a building contractor or other building reconstruction professional to produce a detailed replacement cost estimate. Thank you, State Farm. Could you please inform all of the people in your chain that, hey, we're not always the bad guys.
Did you see the memo about this?
But also, too, if a claims representative or an adjuster is telling you, hey, I don't have what I need to support what you're asking for, maybe you do need to legitimately go back and look at how you're presenting the information.
Yeah, I have the memo right here. I just forgot.
Not always negotiation. Sometimes it's just plain communication.
Mindset change.
When done right, damage assessment isn't about opinions or biases. It's about letting the structure tell its story. The policyholder might recall how the damage unfolded, but they're often not experts in structural specifics or insurance policy language. Who is?
Let the structure speak.
Actually, all the parties in that triangle.
The restoration triangle.
The restoration.
3 people.
Triangle.
Beautiful term. I like that.
To interpret the structure's story and make sure that the story is told clearly. That's photos, moisture readings, F9 notes, again, documenting what's going on. Letting the structure speak during scope creation. We've gathered the data. We believe we can tell a clear story with the data we've gathered, the pictures, the docu-sketch, the Matterport.
You're part of
telling the story of that loss.
You're a storyteller.
Let's talk scope creation. This is foundational in determining the project cost. Scope drives cost. The scope should always be a reflection of what the structure needs to be restored, going back to our standard, restored to resemble pre-loss conditions with materials of like kind and quality, not what we think, not what the carrier thinks, not what the policyholder wants. How often do they call and say, oh, my hardwood floors, and you get out there and it's laminate, right? Sorry.
No fluff.
You didn't have hardwood, you had laminate. It's a big difference. So it's not what we think, not what the carrier thinks, but what the structure says.
Let the structure speak.
And let's be clear, homeowners can hire contractors to do whatever level of work they want at any cost. Our good friend Ed Cross, the restoration lawyer, says, the right price is what a willing buyer is willing to pay a willing seller, right?
This is not a game, cupcake!
That's in the open market. But if they're inspecting, the contractor and the policyholder are expecting the insurance company to pay, which often is the case in insurance claims, we're looking at 2 key factors: the language of the policy. So we have the structure speaking. The policy needs to speak. You bought what you bought. And we've been having quite a few where, policy limits are being reached and the policy written and agreed to didn't quite cover the cost of restoring the structure.
Those are some horrible stories.
Is that the insurance company's fault? Arguably, yeah. I mean, your representative didn't do their due diligence, but also the policyholders, if they're shopping these, low prices, everybody's trying to cut costs, but, at what cost are you cutting those costs? And then the on-site, the second part of that factor, so you got the policy language, it says what it says and it covers what it covers, and the on-site evidence related to the damage. So if the carrier is saying that's excluded in the policy, that's a cue for the policyholder to ask, please show me the evidence of that. Where is that cited? Maybe then getting the agent involved. Hey, you sold me a bad policy, or I need your help in understanding and interpreting this. And then the on-site evidence related to the damage. So again, this damage assessment. The opinions of the contractor, the carrier, or policyholder shouldn't override what the structure is saying.
Let the structure speak.
If we really listen, the structure will speak to the source and extent of the damages and to the necessary scope of work. And once we've established that scope, the discussions about reasonable costs will naturally follow. Scope drives cost.
Great story, compelling and rich.
Thank you for tuning in to the DYOJO Podcast. We hope you were informed.
Yeah, so I've learned something here.
And entertained.
Are you not entertained?
DYOJO.com/podcast.
You can buy John a beer, you can support the show, or you can buy one of the books I've written, the last one being How to Suck Less at Estimating.
What am I supposed to do?
And you can find them on Amazon.
There's nothing like it out there.
It's important to remember in every claim dispute, in every project, let the structure do the talking.
Let the structure speak.
It's the only voice without bias or agenda. The other resources we talked about is the standard, the thing that we should be training our teams and training our customers, educating our customers to understand. This process of insurance restoration is to restore the structure to resemble pre-loss conditions with materials of like kind and quality. no more and no less. You can hire us once we've worked out the details with the insurance company to do additional work or to do upgrades. It starts with that damage assessment, letting the structure speak, understanding what the policy does and doesn't cover, and then working from there. Scope drives cost. If you think about communication, have we communicated as clearly as we can, and bringing the customer along in that process?
The restoration triangle.
The restoration
3 people.
Triangle.
Beautiful term. I like that.
But now it's time to really define roles and responsibilities, use all of this technology that we have to better communicate these things. And I'm not saying in any way that you could have a perfect file, quote unquote perfect file, and still get your teeth kicked in, right? Or just feel like you're banging your head against a wall.
Oh. What the hell are we doing here, Harry?
That's for every other episode we've ever published. But, we have to take as contractors accountability for what our role is, understand that, train our teams to be very proficient in these things. You can find this article in CNR magazine, Let the Structure Speak. We've got a host of books. Be Intentional Estimating, the first one.
This book, John, it gave me an inspiration.
Dang. Be Intentional Culture, which is a collaboration with many leaders in the restoration and construction space, and insurance as well.
Be Intentional Culture. Book hug moment.
We got the hugger in the house.
So You Want to Be a Project Manager is book number 3.
So You Want to Be a Project Manager? A project manager?
How to Suck Less at Estimating is book number 4. And our most recent book, I'd really love for those of you that are owners and managers, this is a book, an outreach book for young people, new hires coming into the organization. It's called P2T, Preparing to Thrive in the Modern Workplace. And this is really designed as you interview somebody, you either want to prepare them for what it's going to take to be successful in your organization, or you're hiring them, and this is part of the initial onboarding. If you follow these simple principles, you're going to kick a lot of butt for yourself in developing your career and being an all-star in our company. It's real basic stuff, all the kind of stuff that parents, educators, workforce development professionals, and business owners want young professionals to understand. So here's just another resource in your tool belt for that employee and team development.
P2T, Preparing to Thrive in the Modern Workplace, is a comprehensive guide that serves as a playbook for both young professionals entering the workforce and managers who are tasked with leading them. This book, designed as the first in a series of easy readers, is a valuable resource anchor that bridges the gap between academic preparation and the practical skills needed in today's rapidly evolving job market. Isaacson has designed this reader with accessible language, especially for English learners, and 2 to 3 page-long chapters. This is a win for neurodiverse learners.
So that's all for today. If you found, with the DYOJO Podcast, if you found this discussion to be valuable, please share it with your fellow contractors and restorers. Keep your tools sharp. Keep your estimates defensible. And until next time, continue thriving in the trades.
What the industry needs is conversations like this.
Thursdays are for DYOJO Podcast.
What are you, stupid?
Mindset change.
Helping contractors shorten their dang learning curve.
Once you get to the point where you're not willing to listen or not willing to learn, you pound sand.
DYOJO Podcast.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Complete hogwash.